deceptive, manipulative.
He's also a former social worker and a political campaign activist.
Some people in town say the base is run by aliens working with our federal government to conduct mind control and genetic experiments.
I'm leaving. I'm glad. Thanks a lot, society, for railroading my ass.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Eerie Americas. This is your host, Kristi Hull.
This is Vicky Ayala.
And we are very dedicated today. It is a very hot day here in New York City, and we have turned off my air conditioner just to record. So we're going to die. But it is one of these
you guys.
Scorching days here. Like, one of the things about New York is, as much as I love the summer, it is hot. It is humid here. Everyone is just a little more pissed off. And it's funny because I'm avoiding it all by staying in the air conditioner all day. And then Vicky's like, we're going to record. And I'm like, oh, the sun's still out. It's so hot.
And it's like not just like we're bitching because it's hot. Like, there's a severe heat advisory. They canceled outdoor events. It feels like 112 degrees outside, which maybe in some states that's normal for you guys, but I don't like it. And so if we suddenly go into dead silence, we died while recording.
But don't worry about it, guys. And real soon, it's not going to be my problem because I signed a lease on a place in Denver. So we're officially out of here. I can't believe it. I'm still kind of like, even though I'm packing up the house and I paid rent somewhere else, it still doesn't feel real. It's really weird. And I think it was you that told me yesterday, like, yeah, you're going to realize, like, when you miss the first major event, that's when it'll hit you. And I'm like, I think it'll hit me when I'm, like, driving away and I sleep somewhere else for the first night.
Like maybe the first few days it'll feel like, all right, I've been on vacation before, so it doesn't feel like that. But I'm like, once you start like getting into a routine and like going to work and talking to us and we're 2 hours ahead of you, that's probably when it's going to hit you.
Yeah, totally.
But I'm not sad. I'm happy because I've known Kristi for a decade, and the whole time I've known her, she said she's gonna move, so I can't act like I'm surprised. But it's like a happy, bittersweet thing because, I love recording right next to her. It's going to be weird when I'm recording and, like, not looking at you. And, like, her expressions make me laugh. So it's going to be so weird.
You just got to get used to my FaceTime expressions.
I'm just going to guess what your facial expression is going to be. But no worries, you guys won't notice anything. And, big congratulations on your apartment. I saw the pictures and I'm excited to visit. She has a pool, which is something you don't really get in New York unless you live somewhere where you can afford a pool. But for us Brooklynites, you don't really get a pool unless it's like a community one and So super excited. So congratulations to Kristi and Charlie. We had a little farewell party for them yesterday. But it was weird because it was everybody we normally hang out with, so I didn't really feel like it was a farewell. But sitting in her apartment right now and like it's empty and bare and I'm like, where is everything? Like, it's so weird.
It's happening.
Like, I walked in and I was like, it's empty in here.
Kind of, sort of. I still have my couch, which that's going to be the weird thing is like the final week, I feel like I'll have to sit down in my chair or lay down in my bed. That's going to be the hardest adjustment.
Right? You're either standing, sitting in your chair, or in bed. Like, that's your only
option. Those are my options.
Those are your options. But
we have quite a long episode today, so I'm going to get into a quick little Reddit post, and then Vicky's going to dive into a very, very famous case with a very different perspective. This is from Reddit user ChicoGirl92, and it says, pulled out of bed. This one time, I was in a relationship with this guy whose family had this thing called a witch's ball that supposedly holds evil spirits in it. Already,
break up.
Nope.
That's it. Nope.
Whenever I'd go to his family's house, I always felt like I was being watched, but would ignore it. Or if I was alone for a second, would say, whoever you are, you don't belong here and need to move on, which would normally help. That is true. I've said that once or twice at weird situations. However, for a while, I didn't know what the witch's ball was. Just that the witch's ball was just that. And I kept telling my boyfriend at the time that whenever I got close to the decoration, I'd start to feel sick. So moving on to him and I being together now for about 3 months, and we were laying in his room talking. I'm telling him that I feel like there's someone attached to him and that they don't like me. He's trying to be all romantic and tells me he loves me for the first time and starts holding me. Right when he starts to loosen his grip on me, I feel something grab my leg, and next thing I know, I'm being dragged off the bed while he is holding onto my arms.
Nope.
Yep, exactly. No way.
No.
Finally, whatever grabbed me, let me go. Needless to say, I broke up with him. He was a cool dude, but not worth getting attacked over. This is just one incident that I've had with the paranormal. So yeah, I think that was
good job on breaking up with him, because whatever pulled you out of bed was not going to let this relationship happen. He told you he loved you, and then you got pulled the hell out of bed. No.
Yeah, that was
it really
a good call.
didn't like you.
Good call. That was
good call.
Yeah,
Smart
I hope
girl.
you found somebody that doesn't have a haunted ball sitting in their family home.
And for anybody out there, if that's like if you're dating a guy and you go over and he has like a ball or anything that's supposed to be haunted, that you feel like you need to sage the place to walk into, you can walk right back out of that.
I agree.
But right now, I'm gonna go into my case. So, Kristi and I have been doing this for like 21 episodes, and we haven't covered too many well-known cases, maybe one or two.
Right.
But this is something that's pretty monumentous for us because it is a popular case, but it's really big for New York. And, the anniversary of it is, by the time this drops, will be a couple of days after. And one of my close friends' mother actually brought it up to me when she knew I was doing this podcast. And she was like, hey, I have an I Survived the Son of Sam story. So I'm going to cover the Son of Sam. For those of you who don't know it, I will give a little background, but just in the interest of doing something a little different and not having a 3-hour episode, I'm not going to dive too deeply into certain details. But I do promise that, I'll mention a few things throughout my case, and I will be posting stuff on our Instagram and our website if you do want to listen to, some more details on things I'm not going to cover. I have a friend, one of my closest friends named Linda, and her mother, was a young woman in the 70s, and she lived in New York, and she was out dancing with a friend of hers, and they were in their car. Now, they lived in Brooklyn, and as you're going to hear when I talk about cases, the shootings were mostly in the Bronx and Queens, but there was one in Brooklyn. But the city was so terrified at that time that everybody was on edge. So she said they were in the car after a night of dancing. So one suspicious looking guy sitting in a parked car for absolutely no reason in the dark on a dark night, and they booked it the hell out of there. And she was like, I can't guarantee that was him, but that's pretty much how every story is going to start with his victims. And that's one of the reasons I'm covering this, is because I actually asked my own mother about that time, and New York was just terrified. So in the 70s, New York wasn't what it was like now. There was kind of like a lot of social turmoil going on. We got hit hard by an economic recession, and it actually caused a lot of the middle class citizens in New York to leave for the suburbs.
And it was gritty as fuck. All you little softies these days
that think it's dirty now
have no idea.
No idea. By the end of the 70s, over 1 million people left the city. That's a lot of fucking people. There were cuts in law enforcement. Unemployment was over 10%. So there was this whole financial crisis. We had lost 50,000 manufacturing jobs, which meant that 1 million people ended up on welfare by 1975.
Insane.
At the same time, crimes like rape, burglaries tripled, car thefts and assaults doubled, murders went from 681 to almost 1,700 a year. Felonies were up over 13%. There was a total of 658,147 serious crimes reported in New York in 1976. That's how bad it was here. And it was basically one of the worst crime years since they started collecting that data. They were saying on an average day, almost 1,800 serious crimes or felonies were committed.
Damn.
For a rate of 75 per hour. According to the 1976 Crime Index, a review of the 7 most serious felonies showed a 13.2% increase from the year before, just in 1 year, from 1975 to 1976. There was a lot of property crimes, burglaries, larceny, theft, motor vehicle theft. That increased by 17%. So that's what's going on here. And then, like Kristi mentioned, it was known as one of the world's grimiest places, to the point where there was actually a 9-day trash strike in 1968, which left the whole city looking like a landfill. Although not everything was negative, it was kind of like a time where a lot of artists could all of a sudden afford Lost in Soho, and they kind of came up with a lot of art and dancing. There was also a lot of graffiti, which is something else that any video report, anything you see from that time, all you see is the city littered by graffiti everywhere on the train. So it was dangerous, it was grimy, it was dirty, and nobody wanted to be here. So we already have that going on in New York, and then you have something sinister that's making everyone paranoid. And it would change New York forever afterwards. A lot of the reports I read literally kept describing as New York as being on fire because, again, when you have so many people living in the city, when you're in an economic crisis, there was a lot of places in New York that were completely abandoned. So what do people do? They set it on fire. Literally, there were thousands of fires all the time just going on around New York. And in 1977, there was also a huge blackout in New York, which resulted in looting, crimes. It was insane in New York. And then you still have something like the Son of Sam that was plaguing everyone. On July 29th, 1976, you have 19-year-old Jody Valenti and 18-year-old Donna Loria, who they lived in the Bronx. They were just sitting in Jody's car after 1 a.m., something that a lot of young people do after they're hanging out. And a few minutes later, after they finish talking, Donna actually goes to say goodnight, goes to open the door when a man approaches the car with a brown paper bag, and he pulls out a gun and fires 5 shots. Donna was shot in the neck and the arm. She ends up falling out of the car and hitting the pavement. Jody starts screaming. A bullet strikes her in the thigh. She ends up falling forward, hitting the car horn. Now, they're in front of this house. So Donna's father, who was on his way downstairs because he's about to walk the dog, starts hearing the gunshots, runs downstairs and, finds his daughter's friend hunched over on a car horn, finds his daughter on the pavement, and goes with his daughter to the hospital. Jody, however, is able to give a description of the killer because she's only shot in the thigh, and she basically described him as a white man with curly hair, about 30 years old. She also knew she had never seen him before. She knew it wasn't her friend Donna, like it wasn't an ex-boyfriend, no one they recognized, nobody seeking revenge.
Just a random stranger.
Just a random stranger. But at this time, the Bronx was a really big Italian neighborhood known for the mafia. So people basically the police thought it was just like a mistaken identity mafia hit. And just because of the area was. So the only things they really knew about the shooting was that the gun was a .44 caliber bulldog. And that weapon is described as a weapon that's solely made for the purpose of killing people. So of course it probably looks like someone knew that and was trying to take someone out. Fast forward to October of 1976, October 23rd, 1976, there's 20-year-old Carl Denaro, 18-year-old Rosemary Keenan were sitting in Carl's parked car when they were also shot. They actually both survive. But the weird thing about this was that Carl actually had shoulder-length hair, and a lot of reports state that the reason he was actually attacked is because he was confused for a woman. So they thought he was a girl, so he got shot.
What an insult.
Right?
Like, literally, to get shot
because they thought you were a woman.
Because you thought you're a woman, it's just like a double whammy. Not to insult my kind or anything like that, but to get shot accidentally, being presumed as a woman, oof, that's bad.
So the same thing happens. 44 caliber gun, 5 shots into Carl's red Volkswagen, and there's a lot of reports state that the recoil on the gun kind of made the shooting inaccurate, which is why they both survived. And one of the bullets actually hits Carl in the back of the skull. Doesn't penetrate anything. It just kind of hits him in the back of the skull. He actually ends up needing a metal plate to replace the portion of his skull that's missing. A month later, on November 27, 1976, 18-year-old Donna DeMasi and Joanne Lamino were sitting on the front steps of Joanne's home in Queens around midnight when a man across the road approached them and looked like he was going to ask for directions. In the middle of asking for directions, he pulls out a gun from his waistband, begins firing at the girls. Both of them, on instinct, turn towards the door. Joanne ends up getting shot in the lower spine, and Donna was shot through the base of her neck. Then there's another 3 shots that the gunman actually missed. A local person did see someone running down the street holding the gun. Girls were rushed to the hospital. Donna ends up not being too badly injured, but Joanne is paralyzed. She has to be in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. Being that the weapon was the same, the police actually kind of thought that this was the same guy. But because there was a different description of the eyewitness, they don't connect the 2 crimes. And that's something I'm going to get into a little bit later, but they don't connect these 2 crimes.
Oh, so they think it's another Italian mob guy with a similar style of gun.
The same exact gun shooting 2 girls in the middle of the night.
Give me a break.
This is the 3rd shooting. Nobody connects it, even though it's all with the same gun, which I would hope that nowadays wouldn't happen, but it happened back then. So now we're in January 30th of 1977. 26-year-old Christine Front and her fiancé, 30-year-old John Deal, were shot as they sat in a parked car in Queens. So the first one was in the Bronx, and then the other ones were in Queens. They had just left the bar. They had gotten into the car, and suddenly the windows were just shattered with bullets. That's pretty much it. That was what it was. They were at a restaurant. They left, and that's it. Christine ends up dying. John survives. I tried to look to see if there was any description of what that was done purposely, because again, this was like a lot of targeting women. Like I find it can't be coincidental that she was murdered and he's like unharmed, but right. I didn't find anything that was even really done on purpose, or if there was just a bunch of shots that missed, but he's not harmed and she ends up dying.
I just don't think it's a coincidence that he preferred to kill women.
And so after this shooting, of course, they see it's the same .44 caliber bulldog. Now the police connect all the attacks. But because there was actually another description of the assailant, they dismiss it. They dismiss that all the attacks are related because at this point they have like 3 different descriptions.
It's in the late 2000s and plus here. I guess we know now for a fact that witness description is not always 100% accurate. They probably were just taking everyone at their literal word, which doesn't make sense.
I pay attention to things, but I can't tell you a detail. So somebody running past me, running towards me, someone across the street, is not going to look the same to me as it looks to someone in your face.
Or to be fair, if you're the person experiencing the trauma, brain's mixing things up.
Exactly. So you don't know what you're seeing. You could have, if you're leaving a bar, you definitely saw more than one person. It could have been any one of those people. Like, it could be anybody. So, but because these eyewitness testimonies are different, they kind of dismiss everything. Now, we're in March of 1977. 19-year-old Virginia Boskericane was returning to her home in Queens at around 7:30 p.m. This one kind of freaked me out because the other ones are like the middle of the night. This is 7:30 at night. In the summer, I mean, in March, the sun is already down, but right now, it's not late at night. People are still coming home from work.
You're risking the shot of like seeing you, which is crazy.
It's insane. Basically, she's coming home and she sidesteps to let someone pass her, to let a man pass her. And as he passes her, raises a gun, shoots her in the head and kills her instantly. Like, imagine just letting someone pass you. You're just walking home and someone just shoots you in the head instantly. Now, after the ballistics test on the bullet that killed her proved to be the same that killed Christine and John, and the fact that they were kind of in a very close proximity of each other, now police are like, okay, this has to be the same
guy.
They actually connect all 4 of the attacks now. Finally, instead of just connecting like the last 2, they connect all of the attacks.
No duh.
So now, even with the different descriptions of the attackers, the police finally decided to start like a task force to catch the killer. Now, mind you, this started in July of 1976. They didn't announce to the public what was going on until April 14th of 1977. They finally were like, hey guys, there's a serial killer running around. Finally announced it.
Wow.
So now you've got this guy who's targeting these young couples in New York, and he seems to be particularly attracted to not only just females, but a specific type of female. It had to be a woman with long, dark, wavy hair. On-air reporters, they kind of go crazy with this information. They were literally approaching women in the street saying, hey, do you feel personally threatened because you have long brown hair? Because, we're not already scared shitless. So now across the city, you have all these women who are scared, and they're cutting off their hair. They're hiding it under hats. They're flooding salons asking to be blondes and to cut their hair. Young couples are avoiding any type of lover's lanes, being alone, anywhere dark where there's nobody around. There was just a frenzy going around. And it's just like, because it seems so random, that's the scary part about it. So all this random killing and wounding of young people and it's across 2 boroughs at this point. It's the Bronx and then Queens. Mm-hmm. So it's not like he just like isolated himself to the Bronx. So now you've got people across New York and they're scared. Store owners in neighborhoods sitting in chairs guarding their everything. Like, people are trying to take things into their own hands. Everybody's terrified. And I remember asking like my mom, I was like, what was it like at that time? She was like, people were terrified. You didn't want to go outside, like especially in the dark. You didn't want to go out with your friends. If you went with your friends, you wanted to go home early. You wanted to not look like a certain type of way. It was scary. You didn't want to sit in a parked car. The city's terrified, and it takes a lot to terrify New Yorkers. And this scared them shitless. Mind you, we're already one of the most dangerous places at this point. All of this crime's going around, but this scared everyone. Everybody. I have some quotes from like people at that time. There was one woman that said, I was 19 years old. I had long dark hair. All but one of Son of Sam's female victims were long-haired brunettes. My girlfriends and I are pinning our hair up when we go out at night, and some of my friends dyed their hair blonde. People are avoiding certain places. So there was a quote here from someone saying, he shot and wounded a young couple outside of Alefa's Disco in Bayside, Queens. After I had danced there, I never went back. So people are staying home, and that, of course, affects other people. It affects businesses. It affects everything. Nobody wants to go outside. Another person said he shot young women who were walking down deserted streets. I remember walking with some girls to a house party one night that summer in Pelham Bay section of the Bronx, not far from where the first victims were taken. When someone mentioned that he had struck right over there, we simultaneously started running and my heart was pounding, the hair on my neck standing. We were truly petrified. We didn't even laugh about it once we got to the party. You know, I remember when I was like 19 or 20, I really didn't give a shit about anything. I wasn't scared of anything. I kind of just did what the hell I wanted. And like, I can't imagine like just trying to be a young person, trying to live their life and
at this time, yeah, it'd be really
being
scary.
super terrified.
Yeah.
Parents also had their own thing because, again, as a young person, they're still trying to live some sort of life. So now you've got these parents that don't want their kids to go out. They're instilling curfews, and it's a super, super crazy time. A lot of things happen nowadays, and it doesn't necessarily send the city into a frenzy. You have these two rival newspapers, the New York Post and the New York Daily News. They're the two leading tabloids, and because they're competing with each other, now they're like saturating the news with this.
Oh,
so
you
now,
mean what they still do now?
What they still do now. Basically, this is where it started. So now you're saturating everybody with this news, and it's all anybody can think about. So, of course, you're just going to heighten everything. And I remember looking through old articles, literally with headlines that saying, "No one is safe from Son of Sam." And then you wonder why the city's in a frenzy.
Right.
April 16, 1977, 18-year-old Valentina Suriani and 20-year-old Alexander Esau were sitting in their Mercury Montego in the Bronx, not far from when Donna Loria was killed. Suddenly, the window erupts and 2 bullets struck Valentina in the skull, killing her instantly. The next 2 shots hit the top of Alexander's head, and he ends up dying 2 hours later. So now this is the first man that was killed. The first policeman to arrive at the murder scene found a white envelope addressed to Captain Joe Borelli. 8 police officers handled the letter, which I don't want to call anybody idiots, but if you have a letter that you suspect is from the assailant, why would you pass it around the hands of 8 different people?
Let me guess. No gloves.
Even after their fingerprints had been eliminated, it looked like the killer only used the tips of his fingers, making it hard to match. But I'm pretty sure maybe they could have pulled something if 8 other people hadn't touched the envelope.
Right.
But after this attack, the media actually reports that there was a chubby teenager was the suspect. But police later determined that the teenager was a witness and not the assailant. Bad reporting. Like, I'm telling you, shit was crazy at this time.
Just further proves how badly they needed the department for the FBI. It's crazy how badly those people were needed. Because
so handled so badly.
It's a standard protocol these days to not do all of these things. And he would have been caught so much sooner if all these mistakes had been made. But there were no rules yet for this kind of stuff.
Right.
So.
And like, especially when you waited 4 attacks before even establishing a task force, you basically just told him to do whatever he wanted. But it was in this letter. I'm not going to read the letter just because it's super long and he left a lot of letters. And I do want to get into certain other aspects, but I will post the letter. But it was in this particular letter that he named himself Son of Sam. So now a few days later, on April 30th, a letter actually gets sent to the New York Daily News journalist Jimmy Breslin. He basically just like tortures everyone and sends letters to police and to the reporters because at this point you're mocking everyone, rightfully so, because you just got away with shit for so long because they didn't even want to connect. I mean, I guess the first 2 maybe, but after 4 attacks, they had just started to connect things. So he's basically just mocking everybody. Now, on June 25th, 1977, 20-year-old Salvatore Lupo and his 17-year-old girlfriend, Judy Placido, had just left a club in Queens. They were sitting in their car, and they were actually talking about the Son of Sam when the Son of Sam attacked. The shots went through a window. Salvatore was shot in the wrist. The bullet that shattered his wrist actually passes onto the flesh of Judy's neck. The next shot gets Judy in the head, but miraculously did not penetrate her skull. The next shot hit her in the shoulder. So Salvatore ends up jumping out of the car, running to the club, and collapsing after a few steps. They both end up recovering in the hospital. Salvatore just ends up with a shattered wrist. Jody, even after getting shot in the head, actually escapes any type of serious injury because it didn't penetrate. Now, a witness sees a white, stocky man running from the crime scene a few blocks away. So now you kind of have the same description as the first attack. This attack kind of just makes the fear spread even more because now he's sending these letters, he's still attacking, and nobody has any idea what the hell is going on. And so now they have a police tip line that is ringing off the hook because now people are starting to report their neighbors, their coworkers, each other. Mothers are like calling up crying, reporting their sons. Women are reporting their husbands. They just want to try to get this guy caught, and they're literally reporting anybody thinking that it might be them because you don't know who it is at this point. We know nothing about this person other than it was a person, and that's it because there's so many different descriptions.
Right.
Now, on July 31st, 1977, 20-year-old Bobby Violante and 20-year-old Stacy Moskowitz had just seen a movie and around 1:45 a.m. parked opposite a playground and softball park under a street lamp in Brooklyn. They decided to have a stroll around the park. They're scared but not too worried because now this is Brooklyn. No attacks have happened here, and Stacy's actually a blonde. So they figure they're safe.
Right. I mean, all the things that the media is telling them, especially Brooklyn, was always ignored at this point.
Exactly. Nobody.
No one cared about Brooklyn at this point.
So they're strolling around the park. They notice a quote-unquote hippie type man leaning against the wall of a public toilet. Now, there's another couple there, Tommy Zano and Debbie Crescendo, who were sitting in their car and noticed that same man as well. Under the street lamp where Barbie had parked was a place like Tommy and Debbie had just been in that spot, but they kind of moved. And that probably saved their life because Bobby ends up parking there. And when they head back to the car, they notice that the man is gone. They're sitting in the car, they're kissing for a little while, and suddenly the Son of Sam fires 3 shots through their car window. Bobby's eardrums explode instantly, feels Stacy collapse in his arms, but he's unable to see her because the bullets actually blind him.
Whoa.
Now, Tommy, the guy from the other couple that had just moved out of that parking spot, sees all this in his rearview mirror as he's driving away.
Wow. Dude didn't even wait for the guys to get away.
No, they're still driving down the block, and they can still hear the gunshots. And Debbie even asks, "What is that?" And Tommy goes, "Get down. I think it's Son of Sam." Because he immediately guessed that's who it was. He said he had a quick look at the murder. Of course, he's driving away. Stacy dies 38 hours later in the hospital, and Bobby was left permanently blinded. Now, there's even more panic because she wasn't a brunette. The attack is in Brooklyn, so now he's literally shooting anyone, and it's completely unpredictable. And now this city is literally crippled with fear. However, because Brooklyn is awesome, we're the ones who lead to the arrest. This is the last time he would ever attack. So according to an article I read on Time History, according to the NYPD, quote, the tip that broke the case came from 49-year-old Cecilia Davis, a terrified woman who told a belated story to the New York police. Davis, who lived near the Gravesend site, that's the part of Brooklyn where this happened, and happens to be right near where I live, where Stacy Moskowitz was killed, said she was walking her dog Snowball.
Oh.
I know. I just picture a wife left dog.
Yeah, me too.
Snowball near her apartment at 2:30 a.m., which I thought originally was a weird time, but I do have a dog that's woken me up at 3 a.m. to go outside, so maybe not. And this is the reason we had the tip, so she walked him at 2:30 a.m. on the night of the murder. She said it was a young man who walked strange like a cat, approached her on the sidewalk, looking directly into her face, and then passed. She said he held his right arm down stiffly as though he were carrying something up his sleeve. 5 minutes later, she heard shots and the wail of a car horn. The next day, she learned of the double shooting. She was certain the passing stranger had been the killer. When detectives questioned her, she recalled the most vital detail. She had seen a cop tagging a cream-colored car parked illegally near a fire hydrant 1 block from the murder site. So now, when the New York police start checking parking tickets issued on the night of the murder in that neighborhood, they found one issued to a David Berkowitz, a Yonkers resident. So now the police are wondering, the hell is a Yonkers resident doing in Brooklyn?
At 3:30 in the morning.
Exactly. So now they start staking out his apartment, and when he finally emerged and the cops confront him, he turns to one detective and says, I guess this is the end of the trail. Now, who would have thought a fucking parking ticket would lead to the arrest of the man who had eluded police for so long? It's just insane. But it seems that he had actually used his own properly registered 1970 Ford Galaxy sedan as his getaway car, didn't even change the license plate to fake license plates. So on August 10th, 1977, he's taken into custody, indicted for all 8 victims, and confesses to all of them.
Thankfully, he's a moron and he never did anything criminally before that to kind of figure out how to get away with it, because who knows how many more
people. And that's what, like, that's part of what bothers me, because it's like, this dude wasn't that smart. And he eluded you for that long because you guys didn't do the right thing in connecting these and handling the letters properly. This guy's not even smart. The
Strokes once said, New York City cops ain't so smart. And they definitely weren't at the time. That's for damn sure. So not to say that cops aren't smart, but
it was not handled well.
That song and what I'm trying to say is not an individual police officer. The system itself
it's the system. It's not the cops.
And is deeply flawed, but it was even worse then in terms of how they handle things.
And it wasn't individual cops. This is just the way things were done. This was protocol. Protocol was wrong. They weren't wrong. They're following a wrong protocol. So now, of course, everybody's wondering why. Now, for anybody who knows this case, I'm sure you know the infamous reason that he gives when he first confesses, but I will get into it. So why did this man terrorize New York City for all this time? He initially claims to have been obeying the orders of a demon manifested in the form of a dog named Harvey, which belonged to his neighbor Sam. And despite this explanation, he is found mentally competent to stand trial. So he pleads guilty to second-degree murder, and later shockingly admits that that whole story was a hoax.
Stupid doesn't mean crazy.
It doesn't at all. So he's, incarcerated, and he is sentenced with 6 consecutive life sentences. And upon it, one interesting thing that I found in the research was that when they did an investigation, he was actually also implicated in a lot of arsons around the city. I don't know if he was ever charged. I didn't find any information, but he was also implicated in arsons. What I really wanted to get into with this case is how did this change New York? And it changed New York in a couple different ways, but literally changed it with law. All of this intense media coverage around David Berkowitz made him a little celebrity, and he definitely seemed to enjoy it. I'm going to post some clips on our website and our Instagram, and you can see, if you watch any old footage, any old pictures from that time, you will see that infamous fucking smug smile of his. Smile every single time that he was photographed, that anybody was following him. He enjoyed this shit. He enjoyed the celebrity status.
You gotta remember, psychopaths love attention.
They love attention.
He never had one before. He was a nobody. He still is a nobody, but he relished on the little bit of attention he did get.
Yep, he certainly did. And because of this, New York actually enacted a Son of Sam law to prevent David Berkowitz and other criminals like him from profiting from their crimes through commercial exploitation of their stories. Because before this, he could have put out a book, he could have done an interview, and he could have gotten paid for it and made money off of what he did. Quote, allowing someone to profit from criminal activity is something that must not be tolerated in New York State, end quote. That is the law. I did read that in May 2012, the New York State Senate actually passed another legislation. Apparently, there was a kind of a loophole that under the law, any money that could be potentially earned by a criminal, basically it depended on how you pled. So now if you had pled a certain way, you could still possibly profit from it.
So not guilty means you can tell your story, but guilty would mean you can't say anything?
Right, like if you took a plea, it didn't really apply to you. So they basically enacted this law. Under the law, any money that could be potentially earned by a criminal will first be used to compensate the victims and anybody who had rights to sue under the law. And anybody found of mental disease or defects, also, that law didn't apply to them. After 2012, this applies to everybody. You cannot profit no matter whether you took a deal, whether you didn't take a deal. You cannot profit from your crimes. So now I'm going to get into some theories, which is something that I was really intrigued by because, again, this case is super famous, but there are things that I didn't know when I was researching it. In the mid-1990s, David Berkowitz does kind of change his confession a bit. Mm-hmm. And even though he did state that whole demonic, stupid dog thing was a hoax, he did claim to be a member of a satanic cult that orchestrated the shootings as ritual murders. And some law enforcement officials have said that this could possibly be credible, but the only reason that they kind of dismiss it is because he's the only one that's ever been charged with the shootings. But there's a lot of people who claim that Berkowitz didn't act alone, some of the victims included. So several people who worked on the case are convinced that Berkowitz didn't do it alone. The then Queens District Attorney, John Santucci, believes that the murder weapon was passed amongst several people. One of the Son of Sam survivors, Carl Denaro, believes he was shot by a woman. There were conflicting reports provided by crime scene witnesses, and this could kind of go into why there was 3 different descriptions of the assailant. Several witnesses claimed that the killer drove a yellow Volkswagen, but if you remember, when Berkowitz was caught, he was caught in a cream-colored Ford Galaxy. Mm-hmm. Tommy Zano, the witness to the Brooklyn shooting, claimed that the killer had long, light blonde hair like straw, but Berkowitz's hair is short, curly, and dark. So it seems that very early on, there's a lot of confusion as to who the person is and what they're driving. Berkowitz himself, in 1975, announced to the press that he had only actually killed 3 of the victims, Donna Loria, Alexander Esau, and Valentina Suriani.
Oh, so somebody went and borrowed your gun and killed 5 other people. Is that what he's claiming?
Well, he claims that there are other shooters involved and that he fired the gun only in the first attack, which was Donna and Jody, where he killed Donna, and in the 6th attack, which was Alexander and Valentina, where he killed Alexander. He said that several other cult members were involved in every incident by planning events, providing early surveillance of the victims, and acting as lookouts and drivers. which is weird because there's so many interviews that, like, there's things that he's done where he literally, like, was asked how he picked the victims, and he's like, it was random. So if it was so random, how did they do surveillance? But we're not gonna get into that.
Yeah, he's such a fucking liar.
But he also stated that he could not divulge the names of these accomplices without putting his family directly at risk, which was crazy considering his adopted mom died, and he only had, like, what family? Like, you're...
Yeah.
Okay. But
whatever.
Among his unnamed associates was a female cult member who claims fired the gun at Carl Gennaro and Rosemary Keenan, and stated that the reason that she wasn't able to kill them is because she wasn't good at handling the gun. And that was supposed to be, like, evidence as to that wasn't him.
Okay.
Berkowitz declared that at least 5 cult members were at the scene of the Christine Frond and John Deal shooting, but that the actual shooter was a prominent member of the cult who had been brought in from outside New York and went by the nickname Manson 2.
Oh, yeah, of course. Of course.
Of course it was. Berkowitz did name 2 members of the cult, though I can't speak
today.
John and Michael Carr. Now, I didn't get into this, but if you're wondering who he was referring to when he said son of Sam and whose demonic dog that was, it was his neighbor whose name was Sam Carr. He named the 2 cult members as John and Michael Carr, who were his sons.
Are you joking?
No.
He's dragging this whole family down because he just is too much of a coward to just admit that he is a bastard. And that's pretty much it.
He claimed that the actual shooter in the Donna DeMasi and Joanne Lamino shooting was John Carr, and that a Yonkers police officer who was also a cult member was involved.
And what, was this John Carr person 16, 17? Do we have an idea of their age, or was it just...
No, it's just, the neighbors.
Him sending out bullshit rumors.
Yep, and then he claimed that Michael Carr was the one that fired the shots at Salvatore Lupo and Judy Placido. Then he says another unnamed accomplice was the gunman in the Brooklyn shooting with Bobby Violante and Stacy Moskowitz, and that this person came from North Dakota. All the way from North Dakota.
And he knows all these people somehow.
He knows all these people, won't give us his names because he's scared, but this guy came all the way from North Dakota to shoot 2 people in Brooklyn.
Yeah, sure.
There are some people who stand behind this theory that he didn't act alone. There's a retired NYPD detective named Jim Rothstein, worked on the Vice Squad during the killings and investigated the claim behind the cult. Quote, once they locked up Berkowitz and blamed him for everything, they said it was done. But Berkowitz was just the guy who took the rap. It was a much bigger thing. Don't think that's how cults work.
No.
They usually don't do that.
They continue to do the things
they don't just stop culting.
Right.
Because someone got caught. It's not really how it works.
Not at all.
But he stated that other sources told him of animal sacrifices in a park near Berkowitz's apartment, and that later German Shepherd bodies were found there. And he isn't the only police officer who believes this. In fact, in 1996, the Yonkers Police Department reopened the Son of Sam investigation due not only to the cult claims, but because many people did not believe the single shooter theory. Quote, what most don't know about the Son of Sam case is that from the beginning, not everyone bought the idea that Berkowitz acted alone.
And that's bullshit to me, because, like, what, you find pieces of dogs? So what? Maybe there's no proof of a satanic cult in America ever. So you can't sit there and say, yeah, this is definitely of a cult thing. And I think that 60s and 70s things were obsessed with cults. Like, I think we've mentioned it before. And they were obsessed with the occult and dark magic.
And they would not have stopped just because he got caught. Exactly. Like, that's not how that would have worked.
It wouldn't have randomly calmed the city down from the 8 killings or 10 killings or attempted shootings that had happened at the time.
And to be honest,
it wouldn't just stop.
If it was that many people, don't you think they would have attacked more people? They could have covered a lot more ground if there was 7, 8 people involved.
Right.
To me, it doesn't make sense, but I find it very interesting because there's so many other people who back it up. Queens District Attorney John Santucci and police investigator Mike Novotny both expressed their belief that Berkowitz had accomplices. NYPD officer Richard Johnson, who was involved in the original investigations, has stated that there were too many unresolved discrepancies with witness statements and accounts from surviving witnesses that all point to him not acting alone. He stated, quote, why are there 3 suspect cars, 5 different suspect description, different heights, different shapes, different sizes of the perpetrator? Somebody else was there, end quote. There's a lot of explanations for that, I feel like.
Right.
I
think there could even be a possibility maybe he's not responsible for 1 or 2 of them and it was a copycat. But I also don't understand why all these cops are coming forward and saying he wasn't acting alone. So show some evidence. Give us some proof that there isn't. It can't just be your instinct and saying witnesses told different things incorrectly.
Even if he didn't act alone, he still acted. Him saying, I only killed 3 doesn't fucking matter because you still killed people, first of all.
And you lose your credibility when you admit that you killed somebody, you killed all of them, and then you recant and say never mind and then do all that. How do we know what you're even saying is true, period?
He doesn't seem that smart. And I would have sang like a fucking canary once I got. Why would you admit to all of it? Guys, he did not even wait to admit it. He admitted it that day. Like, he got arrested and admitted the shit.
And you know what I think changed? When he realized he wasn't going to profit. Because if he can all of a sudden make this cult claim, he could write a book on the occult. He can make up all these stories. He can make up all this alternative facts, as we like to say these days, that fill the story with bullshit. Yeah, he could have manipulated
so much shit and made money off of it.
Of course.
And I guess maybe once he realized, like, shit, I'm going to spend the rest of my life in fucking prison, all of a sudden, like, all your shit is changing. No, that's not how this shit works.
And I actually have not a weird Son of Sam story, but somebody that told me this story. So when I was in college, I had a car that was beat down like everybody else, and I was actually going to school in Queens. After one of my tests, my car wouldn't start. So I reached out to my mom, of course, because I was under her insurance, and she's like, get a tow. And she knew a mechanic at the time. She's like, get to Brooklyn and take the tow. The tow driver who happened to pick me up, I started talking to him about your crime, because that's what I always do whenever I talk to people about things.
30-minute drive to Brooklyn? Let's talk to
Well, it was more like 45 because we got caught in like terrible traffic on the Jackie Robinson. And so like we're sitting there chit-chatting and stuff, and he's telling me a crazy story about one of his old best friends that used to work in a towing company with him. And the guy went to prison for rape. So the guy was a serial rapist, and he was raping women that looked like his girlfriend.
Oh, God.
And it was all over the news. I actually Googled it afterwards, and everything he said was true. So like he felt bad because the guy, he like brought him over and introduced him to his mom. He had gone and had family dinner with them. Like, this guy was his friend. And so I guess he called him when he finally got sent up to prison, and he was on the phone with him one day, and he goes, hey, do you want to talk to Berkowitz? And he got him on the phone, and he got to talk to Son of Sam. And Son of Sam was like, hey, how you doing? And like chatting with him like he was a freaking celebrity.
And that's the thing. He still thinks he is.
He relishes it.
And I'm telling you, once I give you an update on what the hell he's doing now, you're all going to be pissed. Like, he's relishing in it. That's why I don't believe fucking word that comes out of his mouth. But again, other people do. And sometimes a lot of people that jump behind this are jumping behind it, not because of what the cops are saying, but some of the victims themselves. So Carl Denaro has stated several times his opinion that more than one person was involved. And so did John Deal. He stated that his recollection of the night was that he physically bumped into Berkowitz outside of the restaurant that he and Christine were leaving from and walked to his car where the shooting occurred. But Berkowitz, on the other hand, told police that he passed within a few feet of them shortly before they entered their car. But John Deal insists that he and Christine did not pass anyone on the way to the car. They physically bumped into him outside the restaurant and then walked to their car. Nobody was next to them. And that where the car was would have made it impossible for Berkowitz to have sneaked up on them the way that he did in the few minutes between bumping into him outside the restaurant and the shooting. So therefore, John Deal also believes that he was shot by someone else. But again, if there was stuff to support it, this investigation wouldn't be where it is right now. It's suspended. They left it alone.
If you have a matching bullet and a matching gun, I don't understand what even the debate is. And that's my big thing. Is there some conspiracy that the NYPD is covering up and saying, yes, all the bullets match and they lied to public? Or are people just so adamant in their statements because, like I said, when you're going through this traumatic event and you're going through trauma, you might not recollect the proper things. Maybe he thought it was a few minutes that they were sitting in the car and then turn on the car.
You don't know the concept of time when something like this is going on.
You don't know if maybe he did bump into Berkowitz. Berkowitz got pissed. He turned the corner. He crossed the street. By the time you opened the car for Christine, you turned on your ignition. You made out for a second. You chit-chatted for a second. Right. That could have been 10 minutes instead of 5. You don't, how do you recall all those details? I know myself, I've been through traumatic events. A lot of things you black out. You forget a lot of things when things get muddied. Like that happen, and I
don't ever want to discredit a victim, but as someone who's also been through traumatic events, there's things in my brain, and I've even told Kristi that I don't talk about them because my memories are so muddied and muddled, and there's so many things that I myself have blacked out that it's like I can't even say for certain that some of the things happened the way that they happen.
It wasn't until you told me about the victims themselves saying they don't believe it. That's my question is there a cover-up of some capacity that we don't know about, or are they really just so traumatized and confused? Because there could be no other explanation. Why else would these other cops come behind out of nowhere saying, oh, I believe Berkowitz is the shooter?
My whole thing is, why are you telling us after this investigation? But I guess, they got someone in. I don't know. He got arrested and stopped. And that's my biggest thing. Like, regardless of who you say was involved, people don't just stop doing shit like that. So you're telling me these people that were all involved all kept their freaking mouth shut and are all just living their lives and never committed another crime ever, never went into another cult ever? It doesn't make sense. And again, the investigation was suspended. I do see conflicting reports. Some reports say the investigation was closed. Some say it's just suspended and not closed. Either way, nobody's looking into it anymore. And he's still sitting in jail and nothing, this hasn't happened again. If you're wondering what Mr. Berkowitz is up to now, no, he hasn't changed as a person. On the 40th anniversary, which was in 2017, they were doing like a 40th anniversary investigation. They spoke to him. And he's now like, there was a battle going on inside me. And he says, quote, I see that people will never understand where I come from, no matter how much I try to explain it. But what exactly have you tried to explain? You've given 17 different stories. Mm-hmm. You were taking orders from a fucking dog. You had 47 other people who helped you. What exactly are you trying to explain? You just keep giving different versions of events and shifting the responsibility to someone else. So no, nobody knows where you're coming from.
No, that's the mind of a
shit.
And that's the mind of a psychopath. They can't explain themselves. So
he said that before he was captured, he was living alone, where he was feeling isolated, and he was just lost and confused, and there was a battle going on. And he claims that the shootings were a break from reality. He thought he was doing something to appease the devil, and he's so sorry. Dude, I have felt isolated. I've been through feeling alone. I still haven't gone and shot a bunch of people randomly. Mm-hmm. And then he claims he hates the Son of Sam moniker that, might I remind you, he gave to himself. He said, that was not me. Even the name. I hate that name. I despise that name. That was a demon. It was you. You wrote the letter. You called yourself Son of Sam. Like, you gave yourself that name. But he said, it's funny because it's funny you told that story about so I feel like he's still reveling in his celebrity status because people really know who he is. He claims that he's been in jail for so long that the inmates don't know who he is. And he's like, some guys, they're not even familiar with the case. I'm just another face in the crowd. It's like, you're in jail for doing all this and you're still worried about whether or not people know who the hell you are.
Right. He just wants notoriety.
But, as a lot of people in jail often do, Kristi, he has given his life to Jesus Christ. He claims to be a born-again Christian and is now called Brother Dave by other inmates. He now participates in an online ministry that is operated for him by an evangelical Christians. And he says one of his goals is to warn young people on the road to destruction. And he wants to reach out to young people and show them the consequences of their actions. And he claims that he wants to stay in jail. He actually opted out of parole in 2012, and he continues to write his little journal essays on faith and repentance, and he wants to help these students studying psychology, criminology, sociology, and the ones who want to learn more about the criminal mind. He's reveling in his shit. And that's basically what it is. He obviously hasn't changed as a person. Nope. He is still, again, reveling in his little celebrity status because people still know who the fuck you are. I wasn't alive at this time, and I know who you are. And so you're still enjoying all that shit, and I don't believe you're giving your life to Jesus Christ. But
you are where you belong.
You are exactly where you belong, and the moment that you offer some sort of proof that these other people helped you, I'll believe it. But for now, all I know is you were arrested, you were convicted, and everything stopped. Just to not make this too much about him, I did look up what is going on with some of the victims now. As I said, Carl Denaro, he ended up with a plate in the back of his skull. He was actually in the hospital for 3 weeks after the shooting. He suffered damage to his middle finger of his right hand. And the sad thing was that a week after he was shot was actually supposed to be the day he was reporting for duty with the U.S. Air Force. But due to this, they ended up rejecting him because of his injury.
Wow.
So he wound up working as a guard for Citibank. I think he's still a guard. And the crazy thing is that as bad as this was, they actually asked him if he believes in capital punishment because we know New York State doesn't have the death penalty. And he actually said that he doesn't. He said getting shot didn't change my mind about it. He said they should make sure that he's in jail for the rest of his life, but he still doesn't believe in it, which, kudos to you. I don't know how I don't believe in it. I don't know how I would feel if I was a victim of something like that. He said he's doing fine physically. And he says that he realized how rare it is to say he's one of the victims. He said he has limited vision, but no other effects from the shooting.
Good.
And he said he's one of the luckiest guys in the world. And he didn't realize it until he was in his 30s. And it took him 10 years before he really understood what happened.
Right.
He actually report that the early reports of him being attacked actually tarnished his reputation.
Interesting.
He said that that it tarnished his reputation because they actually accused him of being a drug dealer. They said that this was a drug deal gone wrong when he first got shot because, of course, God forbid you, like, tie everything together. And because he, like, smoked weed, he never sold drugs. I mean, come on, a lot of people smoke weed.
Right.
But he was a drug dealer. This was a drug deal. So, like he said, it really tarnished his reputation, and he felt like he was victimized twice. And he said, interestingly enough, that he actually reached out to Berkowitz. He said he wrote him letters in prison and that a meeting was actually arranged several years ago. But Berkowitz's pussy ass, I'm sorry, I have bad language and I don't like saying that word, but he backed out.
Of course he did. What's he gonna tell the guy?
This guy.
What's he gonna say to him? What can he say to him?
You backed out like a fuck. You're so Christian and you want forgiveness and repentance to meet one of your fucking victims face to face.
He can't look him in the eye. That's what it is. He can't do it.
Nope. But yeah, he backed out of it. But he said that he's like, I'm fine. He's fine living the rest of his life without ever having the conversation. He said it doesn't bother him. He said an apology from him would be hollow anyway.
Right. Oh, that's true.
It's very true. Dude, you're awesome, because I would have been like, fuck you, you're meeting me and you're apologizing to me. I don't think I would be that good of a person. Jodi Valenti, who was now in her 60s, she didn't say anything for 4 decades. She really only spoke on the 40th anniversary. Was the first time she had really spoken about it.
Wow, good for her.
And she said it probably took about 6 years before she was able to get in a car at night.
Wow.
She said it took a long time to be able to deal with the sounds of popping fireworks and stuff like that, but I faced my fears again. I don't like fireworks, as you guys all know. This is one of the reasons why. There's plenty of people out there besides me for other reasons that don't like that shit. She actually said that took classes to shoot a gun, but she did it to face her fear of guns, of holding a gun, of the sounds of guns, just to get over her fears. And she doesn't arm herself. She said she doesn't even own the gun. She doesn't have, but she just wanted to get over the fear that she had.
I can understand that.
And she said, like, she goes into it, she's like, listen, people were clubbing and dancing, and her and her friend Donna, who did not survive, they were neighborhood buddies. They both had the same interest in healthcare. Jodi was in nursing school. Donna was studying to be an EMT. She feels bad for the people that lost their lives. She feels bad for her friend. At this point, she would have been my age and having a family of her own and children and maybe grandchildren. And she was actually really mystified as to why anybody was even writing about him after 40 years. She said, what are we celebrating? The lunatic that's in prison for life, who's getting benefits, he's getting 3 square meals, he's getting an education, he's getting everything he needs, and I find it very disturbing. And lastly, John Theo, who we've spoken to before, says he still has really bitter memories of that night. And he says he was like, I would have liked to get my hands on him if he didn't have a gun. And that, his fiance didn't deserve to die. She never hurt anybody. He was like, maybe he got turned down by a woman and something went wrong. And this is why he did this.
That's what I think.
He's like, I just wish I was there to see him die. I'd like to see him suffer because he should feel the pain. One of the reasons I wanted to see what they were like now, because it's, it's how do you move on from that?
Right.
And all they just all were scared for a long time. It took a year. Like, imagine, I mean, granted, luckily New York is one of those places you don't need a car for, but imagine not being able to get into a car at night for 6 years.
That's pretty terrifying.
But yeah, that's basically what it is. And he's over there in prison running a ministry.
Well, let him speak to absolutely nobody. I really hope no one's taking advice from prisoners on Jesus. That's all I'm saying. There's plenty of people outside that can give you spiritual guidance. And
face to face, too, because they're not in prison.
Yeah. So that's pretty intense. But it's good to know that some of the victims have moved on with their life and, don't even wish any ill will, which is one of the braver things that I think you can do. So I'm glad he is where he is. And as far as we know, this case is solved. And hopefully he dies in there where he deserves to.
He deserves to be in there. I mean, he did reject parole, I know, once in 2012 because, he was all like, I need to be here.
And not just that, how could he survive outside at that point?
There's
can't. No way.
He can't. And, I mean, he's been up for parole.
He can't go anywhere without being the son of Sam.
Yeah.
He will always be the son of Sam.
He has come up for parole a couple times after that, and they just keep denying it because he's not safe. He's not safe to be out there because, honestly, I don't care that you're giving your life to Jesus. You don't seem to have changed. Because when we did that, I was reading, I'll post up some clips from that interview from the 40th anniversary, and it's just like, this is still about you, isn't it? This was not about the 8 people that you attacked senselessly and randomly. It was all about you, and you were in a bad place, and you, and you, and you. It's like, people like that don't change, and you're exactly where you need to be. And if it hadn't been for this, I'm sure it would have been for something else. Pretty sure you wouldn't have made it through your whole life without screwing up some, without doing something like this shit.
Yeah, it's just too bad he had to take 8 people down with him.
And that's basically one of the reasons that I didn't want to focus too much on him and his life is because I don't give a shit. And there's a lot of information out there. If it's something you guys really want to hear, whatever. I'm gonna post like some articles and stuff, but I didn't want to get too far into him because I feel like I didn't want to glorify him any more than he's actually glorified. And trust me, when you read about his past, things happened, but things happened in my life too, and I didn't kill a bunch of people. Facts. So I wanted to focus more on some of these theories and things I haven't heard before, like the the other people being involved, and focus on the victims. And I hope that it was informative. If there's, I'm sure there's some people out there who probably don't know about him because this was in the 70s and there's a whole generation of people out there. But yeah, that's who he is. And again, go check our Instagram and our website after this episode drops because I'm definitely going to post a whole lot of stuff up there, including the letters that he dropped by police. That is our episode.
That is episode for that. Let's move on to something that is not as dark as the Son of Sam. How about that?
Yes.
Who does that? Who does that? Who does that? Who does that?
For this Who Does That, I found something pretty funny on HuffPost.com.
Yes,
and it's not far from us. So at least not far from us right now. New Jersey Devils mascot runs through window at boy's birthday party.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
That was
so good. The losing team could use a break, but shattering a glass window probably wasn't what it had in mind. Yeah, New Jersey Devils have had a rough season.
Yeah.
The New Jersey Devils mascot is having a rough offseason after the NHL team failed to make the Stanley Cup's playoff. A person dressed as the team's mascot was working at a kid's 5th birthday party at Little Gym in Edison, New Jersey last weekend, New Jersey 1.15 reported. As the children played a game of parachute, the New Jersey Devil randomly decided to run towards a wall of windows. That's literally what he did. He was in the middle of playing with these kids, and all of a sudden you just see him just charge
like on purpose?
Towards the window. Yeah, we're definitely going to post it on the website. You guys have to see it. It's ridiculous. Twitter user Lawrence Chu identified himself as the father of the boy celebrating his birthday. He wrote in a tweet that, quote, "No one was hurt and everyone had a good time." Oh, I'm sorry. No one was hurt and everybody had a great time.
Oh, great time.
Yeah, not good. Great. Yeah, it didn't matter that he slammed into a bunch of glass and terrified a bunch of kids. They had a great time. So New Jersey. But the Devils reached out on Twitter just in case. The team also shared a video of the incident. So even the Jersey Devils shared the Twitter feed of it. And it's hysterical. So we will definitely put it up because...
Did he do that like to entertain the kids? I mean, I don't know what to do to entertain kids either, but I wouldn't run into a wall.
So basically the kids, you know, that like literal where the kids like swing up the parachute and kids run on the inside. The parachute they suddenly stopped playing. They put it down and he's kind of like flailing his arms around very Jim Carrey style. And then he just charges towards the exit, which is where all this sheer glass was. So he just charges towards the glass and it just shatters and he bounces back.
Oh my God.
And then looks really baffled and then like waves his head like, I'm okay. And that's it. And like the end of the video. And that was it. But like, what were you doing? Were you drunk before? Did you not see that it was a glass window? I don't understand the process of how this person went from playing parachute to walking into glass. And that's literally what happened.
That is... Hey, but everybody had a great time and nobody was hurt. You're lucky nobody was hurt.
The kid's 5th birthday went viral, so I guess it's not bad.
Right? Imagine, like my 5th birthday party went viral because guy ran into
my dad who paid for a mascot walked into glass. Too good. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Vicky freaked me out thinking about that asshole that's not far from here. So
I live right near where the crime in Brooklyn happened, so imagine.
So weird. But I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope you guys check out our website. Email us with any stories or any insights, your opinions. We'd love to hear from you guys.
Subscribe, review, and more importantly, stay weird, Americas. Bye.